So you want to be an it girl?
Hi, guys, and welcome back to Confessions of a Wannabe It Girl. Today, we are joined by Jona Xiao. Jona Xiao is a first generation Chinese American actress who has quickly become one to watch in the entertainment industry, portraying dynamic characters in some of the most talked about projects in film and television. Her credits include Daisy in the critically acclaimed crime drama series Hightown. You can also hear her powerful voice as young Namari in Disney's fantastic action adventure film Raya and the Last Dragon. She also shot and filmed 3 new projects coming out this past month. But if that wasn't enough, she is also this creator and CEO of the business program for actors, Career Activate, which teaches actors how to operate in the industry as professionals. Welcome to the show, Jona Xiao.
Thank you so much for having me, Marley.
Oh, I am so excited. I have been a big fan of Jona for a long time. We met, I am in the program Career Activate. And guys, I'm not joking. She's the most impressive woman I know. So I'm so excited to talk to you all about so many different things. So thank you
Let's
so
do
much for
it.
being.
And I'm so
Let's
glad that
do
you're
it.
one of our amazing elite clients. So it's
Oh,
been awesome getting to know you through the program.
oh, I love doing the program. I was literally just thinking about it when we were getting ready for this interview. So we're going to dive right in here. Jona, you are such a go-getter, or we can say go-giver, but we'll get into that in a second. Can you explain to the audience where your business savvy came from?
Sure. So I really wanted to look at the business side because I knew nothing about it. So long story short, when I was 12 years old, I was scammed by a talent agency, and my parents had like no money. And so it was very heartbreaking, and I felt really guilty and ashamed. And so I was like, I don't know anything about this business side of the industry. And so when I moved to LA, I went to USC. My degree was studying the business side of entertainment, and then I started working on that side of the business. So casting, representation, producing, the side that I didn't know anything about. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, this is what the working actors are doing. I got to see what the working actors were doing that the rest of us we didn't know to do or we weren't doing in terms of actions strategies. So less so the acting side and more so like the business side with marketing, branding, networking, getting a rep, all that side.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, like when you were at USC and
Mhm.
learning all about the business side, did you know you wanted to go into acting or were you not sure where you were going to land in the entertainment industry?
That's a great question. I had wanted to act since I was like 12 years old. And for me, I was open to maybe being an agent, maybe working in casting. So I was exploring because I knew I loved entertainment and I love how collaborative it is. And so, I worked in different jobs. And so yeah, I was considering representation, I was considering casting, and decided ultimately to start Career Activate to help support other actors and to also focus on my own acting career. So I ended up picking those two.
It's so interesting because I think a lot of times actors, I mean, myself included, like we know about the glory, the glam of it, and like know so little about the business side. It's such a like hole in what you see from on your TV at home. Like, what is like some of the big things out of all that other side of the world that you think have helped your acting career?
Sure. So like the business side, is that what you mean?
Yes, the business side.
Absolutely. So what we always say at Correctivate is like there's this table of success. So if you want to
Mhm.
get a lot more opportunities as an actor, you have to focus on the 4 legs of your table. So one leg is relationships and networking, and I think that's the side that a lot of us ignore for so long because we have so many like negative associations with the word
Mhm.
networking because it feels like we're using people, but there's so many ways to like genuinely connect and reconnect with people. So for me, and a lot of our clients, we see it as just making new friends, right? We get
Mhm.
to make new friends with people that share a similar vision to us, have a similar why. And I think that's really powerful. So collaborating with your friends, essentially. So we have networking as one leg, and another one being like branding and your marketing materials, because so much of it is like this whole like getting rich in your niche and really standing out in your category. And we're all unique and different. But so many times we don't know what it is that we're bringing to the table. And
Mhm.
so then it makes it difficult to brand ourselves or to put ourselves out there. The agent piece, a lot of people, that's the side that they focus a lot on.
Mhm.
It's the agent piece, and then maybe self-pitching or getting your own opportunities. So I think all four of those areas are equally important when it comes to building a career, basically.
I love how you mentioned the branding because so much of this podcast we talk about being like your own it girl. And so sometimes,
Love that.
right, you want to find that thing that makes you tick as a special person, your own uniqueness, your it factor, and everybody has one. It's just like you have to
Yes.
bring it forward, and it's a very important part about branding, I think, in so many creative paths. So I love that you brought that up. Big pillar of the podcast. So we mentioned the term go giver, and we know
Mm.
this industry can be tough and glamorized, as we mentioned. Why is it important in the entertainment industry to operate as a go giver? I also feel like this could apply to a lot of other industries as
I
well.
was just gonna say, really,
Okay,
just in
good.
life. I think the more in general, the more you help other people accomplish their goals and dreams, it makes your goals and dreams like way easier to accomplish.
Hmm.
So I have a friend, Jimmy, who he's a director, writer, producer, and for many years, a big his primary focus was really helping his friends get jobs in the industry, driving people to the airport, dropping off screeners for people, like
Wow.
anything and everything he could do to support other people in achieving their goals and dreams. And I remember him calling me one day and he was like, "Hey, Jonah, can you do me a favor?" And I kid you not, that was probably the most exciting question I got all week. I literally jumped up and down and was like so excited that he was asking me for help because he had done so much for me in my life and in my career. And so I was like I was so excited to get to help him. And when he kickstarted his first like feature project, like
Mhm.
he got the funding and much more within like, I don't know, 24 hours. And he was already hitting his like stretch goal after just a few days or something like that, because there's just so many people that like just were so grateful to him and just really wanted to, I guess in this sense, physically, like literally repay his kindness. But so
Right.
much of it was just like we just wanted to give back to him, not out of obligation, but because like he had done so much for us. And I think the more we help other people, the more we focus out, um, we're helping other people, and that makes us feel good, and we're seeing their growth and their progress. And it always comes around in some way, whether it's through
Right.
that person in the future or someone else. We don't do it to get something from the other person, of course, but I think you put that energy in the universe and you just get it returned in so many ways. And then it's like an upward spiral for all of us.
Agreed. I think that says so much about being present with people and really listening to what they're working on, and just it puts you in such a better space to be going for creative dreams by being proactive to others' creative dreams. I just think it can make your self-worth towards others feel better too.
Absolutely. Like two of my favorite questions to ask when it comes to like adding value and helping someone else. I love to ask a question like, "Hey, like what's one of the most important things to you in the next 90 days?" Or you just pick a period
Hmm.
of time, right? Then they answer, and the whole time they're answering, you're just asking yourself like, "Oh, like is there someone I could connect them with? Is there a resource they could use? Like how can I support them?" Sometimes at the end of that answer, like them answering, you're like, like, I don't know. And so
I don't
that's
know.
where part two comes in, the second question, which is react however you would react. So, like, oh, that sounds great, or that sounds really fascinating. What's one thing I can do to support you in that? And
Hmm.
they're just reactions people give you, especially people in the industry that are so used to people wanting from them. They want, they
Mm.
want, they want. It's so refreshing to have someone coming from a genuine place of like, hey, like I see you, and like how do I make your life better?
Hmm. Oh, I love that. And I think it speaks so much to this. Oh, I should tattoo this like TikTok on my body. There's this TikTok, And it's this guy, he's on a podcast and he's saying, like you shouldn't be jealous of the people around you because the people you're surrounding yourself with, like if they're succeeding, like you're succeeding, like God is in the neighborhood is the saying he
Oh, I
uses.
haven't heard that.
I'm
God is in the neighborhood.
I'm going to send it to you after this. It's so good because I think also in this industry, everybody wants something from somebody. And on top of it, there's a lot of comparison. And like, you just have to remember if
Compare and
those
despair.
compare and despair, if they're succeeding and you know them, you're succeeding like too, because you're helping everybody's dreams get there.
Absolutely. Like, with our elite client community, it's what we always say is like, look, if it's happening to someone, like if you're seeing that Facebook post and like, she just booked a series regular, and instead of being like, oh, well, like that's nice for her, like, why can't I do it? Instead of why can't I, we need to ask ourselves better questions. So instead of
Mhm.
why can't I, it's how can I? Or what can I learn
Mhm.
from them? Right. And also, as you said, like God is in the neighborhood. So if someone in your immediate network, your community is doing it, then it's so much closer to you, because so much of our values, what's important to us, is very much shaped and molded by the people we spend time with. So
Mhm.
that's very different from, like, for me, for half my childhood, I grew up in a trailer park in upstate New York. So I was in this trailer park where I knew no one in entertainment, right? The closest I knew to someone in the business was like watching TV shows. So it's like seeing actors on a TV screen, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, that was for me so far removed from my life, right? But wanting to like be an actor, and like, what does that even look like?
Right.
Versus being in a community and being around people who are doing it, who are ambitious and go giving. And I think that's why I feel like community is one of the most underrated things that doesn't get talked about, that the importance of it um, is tremendous. And I think that helps combat the loneliness that a lot of us feel. Like when I first moved to LA, I lived in such a, LA is such a crowded city, but I also never felt so lonely.
Mhm.
So I think having that community, and creating that community for yourself, is like a must when it comes to the quality of your life.
I agree. And I think that's having that kind of community is the kind of thing that will keep you going versus maybe
Yes,
leaving. Yeah, to have that support.
absolutely. Hmm.
All right, let's talk about the grind of the entertainment industry. A
Okay.
big pillar of this podcast is we love to talk about how glamorized jobs look so easy, maybe to the audience watching that TV show. But we're talking about the work, the craft, the networking. Can you tell us about your term aggressive with grace and how it came about? And what kind of situations do you use aggressive with grace?
Sure. So the term aggressiveness with grace, I first heard from Gary Marsh, founder of
Mm,
Breakdown Services.
love it.
So one of our elite clients, Max, calls it aggressiveness. So aggressive
I
with grace.
love
I'm like,
that.
I was like, I like that. I was like, can I use that? He's like, absolutely. I'm like, thanks, Max. So
Love
I think
him.
it's really important to be aggressive, because I find that 90% of actors are not aggressive enough. We're too scared. We're too timid. We're too worried about getting blacklisted, right?
Mhm.
And then 10% of us, maybe we're a little too aggressive and we could use more of the grace side. But I think most people could be more aggressive, but with
Mhm.
grace. That's the importance. Um, so what that can look like is, if there's a role that you're really right for, reaching out to your rep, and being proactive about it, and not just thinking, well, like, I hope they submitted me and pitched me, but instead maybe something like, hey, like, I'm sure you already submitted me for the role of X on this project. I was wondering how you felt about pitching me because, and then giving them maybe a couple bullet points. Maybe
Mhm.
they don't know that you have a special skill that's really connected to that character. Maybe they don't realize that you have a connection with that producer. Maybe you babysat that producer's kid before, right? So, like, um, those bullet points can really help them take the next step in pitching you for that project. So that's like one example of being aggressive with grace. So you're not, the too aggressive approach might be like demanding to your rep, like, hey, you need to do this and you need to do that. That might be too aggressive. And then you're not being aggressive enough if you don't go after the opportunities that you think you're right for. Because you have, as you said, like, we all have that it factor. We all have that gift inside of us. And so if we're not sharing that with the world and we're not putting ourselves out there, then we're robbing this world of a lot of contribution and a lot of us that this world needs. So stop robbing from people.
Yes, stop robbing from people. I
That shit
love
up.
well, and I think it goes into the whole idea of sometimes, we're worried like I'm not good enough. I'm not, I can't ask this of my rep or, my boss or whatever it may be, because like, we feel beholden to like a power structure. But it's like if you approach things professionally and, say, I know this person, this is why XYZ, I think this is a good fit for me. It eliminates that, construct of like the power of that you don't believe that you can fit in this way. And I just think it's
Absolutely.
so empowering to be like, hey, like I, no, like I do know this person, I got this. It's just so wild though, because I think for a long time for myself, just in my own life, like I felt so beholden to that like idea.
Absolutely. That's very relatable. I think that's happened to a lot of
I
us.
think a lot of people go through it, and it's not just like in the acting industry. Obviously, I always talk about it in relation to the acting industry because
Mhm.
that seems like the system I really know that I'm like, oh, like I'm scared of the people above me. But it's like, no, like put your worth out there.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the self-worth journey is like a lifelong journey for most of us.
Yes, couldn't agree
Like
more.
it's still a work in progress for me, but it's a big improvement from my college days where I asked the wrong questions, right? Like I perceived myself as someone that was broken. I was struggling with an eating disorder and a gambling addiction at the same time. And I just saw myself as a broken person. That's how I saw. I was like, I am broken. So I would try to fix myself. Like, oh, how do I fix myself? Which the problem is like it presupposes that that there's something broken.
Mhm.
And instead it was very much like me coming to realize, look, none of us are broken, none of us need to be fixed. We actually have everything inside of us to succeed, all the resources, everything we need. Now sometimes we feel a little cut off from them, and we can use support from other people, programs, tools to help uh, basically access those resources and tools that are already inside of us. And so I think that was a big distinction and a huge turning point for me. Was not seeing solutions as all outside of myself, that they were already inside of myself and there was nothing missing about me, that maybe I just needed support connecting to those resources.
Oh, I love that because I think so many times we get so stuck in like structures and look outwards to fix things, but it's already there. Like you have it. You just have to maybe uncover it, and that can be working with a mentor, a coach. There's so many
Absolutely.
different ways you'll get back to that. So I think that's just
Yes.
such an excellent point to bring up. You have probably heard this idea. You've heard the idea that it's not about what you know, but who you know. Thus, the dreaded people dread networking. And I mean, honestly, before career activated, I've been career activated. I feel so much better towards reaching out towards people. And I don't even like the word networking anymore. I like relationship building. Can you
Yes.
tell us why it's just so important to reach out to people and share your goals with those around you?
Absolutely. It's really hard to achieve anything in life, especially a goal as audacious as like, being an actor or a working actor in this business. We know how competitive and challenging it is. We get told that all the time, right?
Yes.
So especially with such an audacious goal, it's so important to get support, right? I always say successful people do it themselves, but never alone.
Mm,
So if people don't know what your passions are, if they don't know what drives you and what you're excited about and what your goals and dreams are, how can they ever support you? Right.
mhm,
So I think it's so important to share your goals with other people and ask them for theirs. And it's really exciting to see someone light up and for them to see you light up as you talk about the things that are important to you and the next steps for you. So I think, yeah, I definitely believe that the quality of our life is in direct relationship to the quality of our relationships, like
mm,
hands down. And so that's why there's a Tim Ferriss exercise that I like to do regularly. I generally recommend people do this maybe like once a quarter at least,
Mm.
which is like what make a list and you could keep it private. Who are the 20% of people that are contributing to 80% of your stress, anxiety, fear, worry? And
Mm.
then who are the 20% of people that are contributing to 80% of your joy, inspiration, happiness, fulfillment? And take a look at those lists. And it's not necessarily about cutting out, the people that are on the first list, but maybe like, does the nature of that relationship need to change? Or do we just want to spend less time with those people and more time with the people on the second list that are
Mm.
helping us be the people that we want to be and feel the way we want to feel?
Right. Oh, that goes back so much to the idea of like a little bit what we were talking around, like your community. It kind of is, it is part of you. Like, and have you heard you're like the sum of like the seven people you're closest to?
Mhm.
I live for that quote because I think it's so true. It's like, if you are the some of the people you are around, and if someone is making your 10 feel like a 3, yes, you don't have to cut them out, but like maybe we need to adjust the relationship, or you need to adjust how much you let them affect you. And I think
Yes.
that's huge, and just in the personal journey, and let alone if that's something you're dealing with in the actor journey. Whew, like it can be a lot.
Absolutely. And for me, like our coaches at Correctivate are amazing and we have like we support one another as well. And like a lot of times they're my go-to if I'm dealing with like a personal stress or like a bit like it's hard to be objective with your own career.
Mhm.
And so I go to them for help. And I remember there was a period where I was starting to audition. So I'd done a lot of like smaller roles on TV and I felt very comfortable doing that and smaller supporting characters, but like there was this mental block that I was dealing with, like not really feeling like I was interesting enough or good enough to play like a bigger role on a TV show or a film. And so I remember talking to one of our coaches, Rachel, and we just had this really lovely like mindset discussion. And she asked me like, some really great questions like that were really pointing at like why did I feel like I wasn't interesting enough? Like what is it about? Like is it true that like I'm not well, I don't have enough training? Is it really true that other people are more talented than me? Like what were the blocks getting in the way? And like, you know, having being in that space of people that see your potential when you don't sometimes helps you, as you said, like keep going and not give up. And so, it was a challenging time for me, like mentally and emotionally, but I'm really glad I had that community to support me through that. Because there was definitely several times in my career where I seriously considered quitting and throwing in the towel. And it's unfortunate how many people quit when they're like 3 feet from gold or whatever
Mm.
that phrase is, right? Where it's like it's just right there and they don't realize it. And so I'm a big proponent of the quote, if there's something that you want that you don't have, it just means there's something you don't know. Notice I
Mhm.
didn't say it's because you're not good enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not this enough. None of that. That's all BS that like the lizard part of our brain sometimes tells us, that's like priming us for fear and making sure we're okay. So I think I always go back to that, like that it's not like a missing part inside me. It's something I just need to discover or learn.
Mhm. Oh, which just makes me always think about knowledge is power, which always made me think like, oh, be in school, learn things. But sometimes it's just like knowledge of the self, like knowledge of those around you will really continue to empower you and move you
Especially
forward.
if you take action on it. And that's why like
Yes.
accountability, like when I'm being coached, accountability is a big piece. Like I
Hmm.
think there's this perception that like some people just never need accountability and they're a very small percentage, I think. For me, I'm like, I'm a bit lazy. And
What?
I know. Yeah, some of my like
I'm like
super close
shocked.
friends, some of my close friends know this about me. They're like, yeah.
I feel like you
Like,
just dropped the biggest confession I've ever
I
seen
don't
in my life.
this might sound gross, but sometimes I'm like, I don't want to brush my teeth. I don't want to like there's just like the easiest things. I'm like, just don't want to, right? Like, and I think that's so natural. And I think we all go through that, and yet we beat ourselves up for that. But so then instead of like again, instead of being like, oh, I'm a lazy piece of shit, instead of like all that, it's like, okay, what's going on for me? Like, do I need to take a step back and like do some me time? What are my accountability structures? Like, how do I
Mm,
put a structure in place so I can be successful, as opposed to like always having to depend on like willpower. For a long time, I thought willpower was like, I just need more willpower. Like, and I realized that for me, environment is way more powerful than willpower. Like the
mm.
environment and the structures you set, like the people around you, the structures you've set up for yourself to follow through are like way more powerful, in my opinion, because willpower is very finite and for me can disappear very quickly.
Well, that's so interesting you say that because I would have never known that. I would have never I would have been like if someone asked me and they'd be like, "Do you think Jona Xiao is lazy?" I'd be like, "No, she's the exact opposite of lazy. Is a lazy person." But it's just so crazy because also I do think this career being as driven as you are can lead to like burnout. And
Yes.
it's important to know with like what kind of structures you can set up to keep you in a middle tier from burnout. We all have seasons in our lives where we just go so hard.
Hmm.
And then we have other seasons where like we need to just like lay back and recoup because I've found for myself, this is totally from my own experience, that if I burn out and I don't recoup, I actually start making a detriment to myself, my act, even my acting skill, my efforts I'm putting out. Like I'm not putting my best foot forward. So sometimes it's so important to take that break, talk to an accountability partner, talk to a friend, just like catch up
Hmm.
on some real life stuff, and then maybe you'll like come back to being a real creative person operating in a really hard industry.
Absolutely. One of our coaches on the team, Tiffany, I love that she said recently, she's like, look, when you're watching TV, if you're on Netflix and chilling and you're beating yourself up for Netflix and chilling, it's like, hey, like you're doing research, you know,
Yep.
for you in the entertainment industry, like that's research. And it's like, oh, that's true. No, of course we don't want to, if we're all of a sudden like Netflix and chilling like 12 hours a day for like a few weeks.
Or TikTok scrolling for endless hours. You're right.
Right.
Like,
But it's amazing how often, like working with so many actors, like how often we're so hard on ourselves and we beat ourselves up, and how important. I'm a recovering perfectionist, so I understand. But so much of it is like really focusing on what you're doing well and like leaning into that and then adding things instead of
mm,
like just looking at like, oh, well, I don't have this and I don't have that and I'm not doing this. And man, like I'm such a failure. Like that doesn't help us. We think, I mean, maybe there's a very small percentage of the population that's truly positively motivated by that. But for most of us, it's really unhelpful. And
mm,
it doesn't put us in a space of like power and excitement and passion. And when we're in that kind of more negative space, then it's more fear-based and like desperate and like, I need to do this. And people feel that energy. And
right.
it's it doesn't help us at all in
Right.
terms of achieving our goals.
Yeah, I love what you say when, you're in that like desperate, needy space to nobody wants to be around that energy. Like it's uncomfortable. And so I always use this like analogy. Like if you're driving the car like really dangerously and scary, everybody on the freeway is like, what the hell are you doing? Like
Yeah,
it's
you're just like,
scary.
I just need to get out of the way.
Right. Like I just want to get out of the way. Nobody's impressed by that. Like it's just a check-in with yourself that like, okay, operating in this place might be pushing away the things I want instead of welcoming them in.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
I love that. I just love this conversation. So I have always been so impressed by your professionalism. And you are a female in this industry who is just so strong in your mentality and professionalism. However, we can't ignore the issues that have happened to women in the past in entertainment industry. Can you
Yes.
speak on how you advocate for yourself as a woman in the entertainment industry? But I also think this is something that's really applicable to just women in the workplace.
Absolutely. I don't know the exact statistic, but it's like the percentage of men that will apply for a job when they don't have all the like qualifications or all the like suggested
Right.
qualifications is way higher than women who will apply for that same job. Like it's more likely that a woman will look at the post, and if she doesn't meet every single requirement, she's like, oh, then like this isn't a right fit, or I'm not
Mhm.
good enough for this job, which is really interesting. So like knowing that us as women as a whole, of course, just a
Mhm.
broad generalization, because of how we grew up, the messaging from TV and film, some not great messaging that we grew up with, we unconsciously or consciously put ourselves like lower oftentimes than men. So I think first being aware of that and knowing like, hey, like there's men out there, our counterparts that maybe are sometimes are less qualified than us, yet they're getting the opportunities, and they're also going for those opportunities. And so um that question of like, well, why can't I? Right? Like,
Mhm.
and how can I? So I think it's a lot of like, if this is something I'm still working on, is like communicating what my needs are and what my wants are. I remember I was in like a coaching session, and it was a 1 hour coaching session, and I was like debating on it was like a team-based decision where I was in a leadership role. And I was like, okay, well, if we go this direction, then this is how this will impact this group and this group. And then if we do this, like for like 55 minutes, it was like this like and then like literally at like around 55 minutes in, I made a comment about like what I want to see is like a vision of this. And then my coach was like, whoa, stop. I want to stop you. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, did you know that it's been 55 minutes of you discussing this, and this is the first time you've said the words I want or I need?
Mm.
Everything prior has been about what would help other people, what would make this person's life easier. But this is the first time you've said I want.
Mhm.
And I just want to bring that up. And it really hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh, how often I am thinking about like, and of course we want to think and help other people, like what we talked about earlier. But I think women, especially, because we're naturally nurturers, we give so much to other people. But if we don't fill our own cup, there's only so much we can give to others, and we run ourselves dry. So I think for me, it's about being like a lot more direct in my communication,
Mhm.
and saying things like, I need X or I want Y, and then sometimes adding a because, like
Mhm.
explaining so that it doesn't come across as like super demanding or um, asking for too much. Like if it's something that I think is a bigger ask, then I
Mhm.
share the why, and then it's a lot easier for someone to say yes because they understand where we're coming
Now, for some women, myself included, sometimes
from.
getting the courage to like even say that can be terrifying. What would be your advice to like get the courage up to speak in that manner?
Sure. So there's some a little phrase that I use sometimes, is like if I'm about to ask something and I feel uncomfortable and I
Mhm.
also don't know if this is like too big of an ask, like I might first say, okay, this might be, uh, would it be like crazy for me to ask, or would it be too much for me to like ask X or um want Y or whatever it is, right? Like, oh, like could it be like, would it be way too much to ask for you to connect me with your friend so and so that you just talked about? Because
Mhm.
I'm currently working on blah, blah, blah. And I think we might have some nice synergy here for these reasons, right? Like, I don't know, I
Mhm.
just like spitball something. So if it makes you feel more comfortable to add that preface to that question, I think that for me has made it a little bit more comfortable.
Mhm.
Um, Also, things that I remind myself of is like, if look, you're going to be in the same spot if you don't ask, right? It's a no if you don't ask. So there's more. Sure, it might feel disappointing, but that's where we get to let go of expectations, and like we'll just see what happens. I read a quote, the exact phrasing I don't quite remember this morning, that was like, um, as as much as disappointment hurts, regret can last forever.
Mm.
And I was
Yeah.
like, all right, okay. So if we don't ask for what we want or we don't communicate our needs, right? And we just like, then is this something we could end up regretting for the rest of our lives? You know, when we die, we don't, what we don't want is like to regret like the relationships we could have had, the opportunities that we were like scared to go after, you know what I mean? And that sucks.
Right.
So even if it's like imagining like, like we're all gonna die at some point. So like how do we make the most of our life and how do we go after the things that we want? And and it matters, the more that we it's like as I said, it's like a spiral. The more we help other people, we're helping ourselves and growing and learning, and then they're helping us. And when we ask for things, and this is the other piece that doesn't always get talked about when we talk about being a go-giver, right? And being
Hmm.
generous is like the importance of also asking for support. I believe in balance. It doesn't feel right to me if you're always someone who gives, 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 and never asks for help. I think that that is, I would say, equally not good
Yeah.
as not giving, honestly, because I think it's so important, like energetically, like giving and receiving. And I think some people are way better on one front than the other. And I think we need to work on whichever side we're less comfortable with.
Oh, yes. Always pushing ourselves into the next uncomfortable thing, but for growth.
Yes, yes. Everything we really want happens outside our comfort zone, right? If we want something
Yes.
we've never achieved, we've got to do things we've never done.
Well, and also like if it was easy and comfortable, you probably wouldn't be interested and want to do
Right.
it.
Everyone would have already done it, right?
Right, exactly.
Yes, and so much of it's like we have a lot of people have goals and dreams. And like let's say for an actor, it's like to be on a series regular on a TV show. Like a lot of actors have that goal and that dream. But the question is, and you have to really ask yourself this, are you willing to do what it takes to get to that goal? Because I think anyone can do anything anyone else has done. I truly
Mhm.
believe that. And that's the teacher in me, that's the coach in me, but that's like I firmly believe that. But are you willing to do everything that you need in order to make that happen? And I think most people, if they're truly honest with themselves, they'll say, I'm not doing everything I can and I know it. Or I'm not reaching out to get asked for support the way I know I need to achieve this big goal.
Oh, yes. And it's just another reminder to not go to your bed with regrets is ask and ask.
Yes, absolutely.
Jonah, you are just so impressive. This is honestly a very selfish question. I just really want to know who are the people that have inspired you, or books you have read that have really stuck with you, or even just a talk you've heard?
Oh, uh,
Because I know you got a lot.
I am a big fan. I shifted from being being a know-it-all. It was quite annoying, I'm sure, to being a learn-it-all in life.
Mm,
So I like our Career Activate Elite program has been modeled after coaching programs that I've been a part of. And so for me, I'm always inspired by our coaches at Career Activate. They're fantastic. The coaches I've had in my life, like Matt Browning, I did NLP training through with him, and NLP was really huge on helping me have almost like a user's manual for the mind of understanding like
mm,
how our minds work, like why we create the beliefs, the behaviors we do, how do we shift those behaviors and habits, how do we communicate more effectively with people. So there's a lot of like things you can Google and YouTube with like NLP and things like that. There's an audiobook I listened to recently called Eat That Frog that I enjoyed. It was like very simple, but it was really about like what are like each day you want to eat a frog at least, which is like what's the thing that maybe it's not the most time pressing thing in your life. There's not necessarily a deadline, but it's really important,
mhm,
right? So that could look like you finally like for me, I was had thought about how like looking into financial advisors for a long time because that's an area that I don't know a lot about. And I just like put it off and put it off. I'm like, well, there's no specific deadline. And I was like, okay, like financial wellness and what financial health is important, just like other areas of health. And so that was like me eating a frog was like, okay, I am going to ask for recommendations. I'm going to post on Facebook and I'm going to reach out to a few friends. And that to me was eating a big frog that day because it's
Mm.
something that I put off for years. On the lazy little comment earlier, years. So like that was an example of like eating that frog. Um, and I love going on YouTube and just whatever I'm dealing with. Like I was struggling with like some like anxiousness in my romantic relationship. And so literally I went on YouTube and I'm just like uh dealing with anxiety in relationships. And I love listening to like a lot of the advice and the stories, and it really helps reframe and put a perspective on things. So I'm constantly seeking out like I will always have at least one coach in every area of life that I care about.
Mm. Oh,
And
I love
so
that.
yes, I am a big proponent of that, and I believe in that.
Oh, I love that because I think it also says a lot about your character that like you can just go on YouTube and listen to something and really let it in. I think it says a lot about your presence and your openness. And I think that's something we can all work on is to, be open to coaching, be open to, looking outside to help what's going on inside and just like it feels like everything's right at our fingertips, but sometimes we get so blocked.
Yes, that's very true. Well said.
So, Jonah, you are so insanely impressive. Thank you so much
You
for
too,
taking the time.
Marley.
Oh,
You're
please.
pretty amazing. I've gotten to see
Oh,
you grow and shine, and like it's awesome because I feel like you really like honed in on like your it factor, and it very much comes out like
oh,
when you're doing
thank
your
you.
podcast or acting or in our community. And thank you for the really amazing specific questions you
Oh
asked.
my gosh. Well, just thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for being like the force that you are. I'm just so glad that I know you and I want everyone else to know you as well. So if you could tell everybody where they can find you and all the information about that you can give us about your upcoming projects.
Sure. So you can follow me on the social medias at Jona Xiao. So that's spelled JonaXiao. So you can follow me there. If you're an actor and you want support on the business side and you're willing to get some support and encouragement and tips and strategies, we have a wonderful mailing list and a lot of free content. You can go to careeractivate.com and you can also follow at careeractivate on the different socials. And in terms of upcoming projects, so I have a TV show that I played it was a very dramatic role that uh, what can I say? Um, it really touches on a side of human labor and like sweatshops that I think a lot of people overlook. And so I think it's a subject that is really important. And that comes out probably in November. It's an action thriller. I'm also, I have a project that's coming out on Disney Plus in I heard the last date I heard was 2024. I was like,
Okay.
what? 2024? That's a whole like, oh my gosh.
No, like I feel
Um,
like I'll be a different person by then. Not
yes,
really, but
where I play like a really badass female character that yeah.
well, we have much to look out for with Jona Xiao, and you can catch her also in Hightown and in Raya as well. Those are already some projects out, as we've mentioned. Jonah, thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you, Marley. You're fantastic.
Thank you guys. We'll see you next Tuesday.